Alright, I get a lot of questions about why I sweat so much in my videos. Let me tell y'all why. I got two bright ass lights shining on my face. I can't turn on the fan or the AC because I want to keep the audio crisp as hell. And it's also like a 95-degree day today. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm looking like C-Web today. I'm wearing a headband.
I'm on my way to an island and I'm popping shit at the pilot. Niggas be broken, be sobbing, but still talking shit like they violent.
Kobe Bryant's career is one of the most confusing and polarizing careers in NBA history. A man that is widely regarded as one of the best to ever do it, yet an equal amount of people overglorify his career as there are who undermine it, especially as of late. About a week ago, I talked about the pendulum of being overrated. How a player being overrated can change as time passes, and now I'm here to tell you all that Kobe is one of those players that at one point was extremely overrated, but as time passes has gotten so much criticism that he may actually be on the underrated side of the spectrum. With pundits on TV and social media, I've seen almost all the arguments for and against Kobe, and I can tell you there are a lot of skewed facts or arguments being thrown out there by people that simply have way too much influence on people that look to them for information. And today we will explore those arguments as we expose some of the myths about Kobe Bryant's career. 2008 MVP. In 2008, Kobe won his one and only MVP, and an argument that I've been hearing a lot is that the only reason Kobe won MVP was simply because he hasn't won one, so the NBA had to give it to Kobe that year, when in reality, Chris Paul should have definitely won it. Now, I have no problem with people thinking Chris Paul should have won this year. Chris Paul had an all-time great season this year, but this notion that Kobe was an undeserving MVP is far from the truth. A lot of people like to point out that Chris Paul carried his team to one less win than Kobe with less help. But let's actually look at the rosters of each team and look who actually had more help. Chris Paul's best teammates that year were David West, Peja Stojakovic, and Tyson Chandler, while Kobe Bryant had Pau Gasol, Lamar Odom, and Andrew Bynum. And the fall off after those guys from each team is pretty noticeable. And at the helm for LA was Phil Jackson, one of the greatest coaches of all time, while for New Orleans it was Byron Scott. Now, by no means am I comparing Byron Scott to Phil Jackson whatsoever, but for this season alone, he coached his team well enough to win Coach of the Year, so it wasn't like he had a terrible coach. So just from talent and names alone, they're looking pretty even if we're keeping it real. But now let's add some context to it. Chris Paul had David West, Tyson Chandler, and Peja for 76 plus games of the season that year. Now let's look at Kobe. Pau Gasol didn't come until the trade deadline, meaning that he only played less than 30 games of the season with Kobe. Their starting center Andrew Bynum missed more than half of the season, and Trevor Ariza did as well, meaning that for a majority of the season, Kobe's second best player was Lamar Odom, and his third best player was Derek Fisher. And even before Pau Gasol came, Kobe was already carrying the Lakers to a 27-15 record, already on pace for a 53-win season in a Western Conference that was so tough that a 48-win team didn't make the playoffs. Kobe Bryant is clearly a deserving MVP, robbed of multiple MVPs. Now, this is what makes Kobe so hard to judge, because there are as many people that say that Kobe should not have won any MVPs as there are that say he should have won like 3 to 4 MVPs. But when I'm looking at the people who won MVP, I don't know of a year where he should have won it but didn't. Now, I've watched this video right here that explains why Kobe should have 5 MVPs. And he essentially just bases his whole argument on pure stats alone and how he should have won it in 02, 05, 06, and 07, as well as 08 as he did, as he compares his stats to the people who did win it and how the only reason those people won it was because they were on a better team. Now, I've already gone into detail about the MVP award before, and I don't want to reiterate my whole video, but in short, this idea that the MVP doesn't always go to the best player is not new news. There has been a criteria that's been pretty much developed the past 60 years that has consistently awarded great stats and winning along with a great narrative. In 2002, Duncan carried a team in which his second best player was the 36-year-old David Robinson to 58 wins. The same wins as the Lakers when Kobe had Shaquille O'Neal in his prime and wasn't even the best player on his team. Did Nash get a little too much credit for 05? Yeah, sure. But you simply can't win MVP and be the 11th seed no matter what stats you put up. In 06, going off of his own argument, you can say LeBron put up better numbers, but this was a year where Nash lost his second best player, Amari Stoudemire, and still led that team to 54 wins despite such a big loss to the team. And in 07, Dirk led his team to 67 wins, while Kobe led his team to 42 wins. That's 25 more wins. Again, this was another year where LeBron put up better numbers if we're not applying any context to it and comparing the assists and rebounds of Tim Duncan to the assists and rebounds of Kobe Bryant. The fact of the matter is, Kobe really did just deserve one MVP. There is no other year where he should have actually won MVP over who won it based on the criteria that has been established the last 60 years. Kobe was inefficient. Kobe Bryant throughout the years has gotten this reputation of being a shot chucker. And I know we've all seen all the memes and they're hilarious, don't get me wrong. Now, Kobe was never the most efficient player ever. All I'm saying is this idea that he's inefficient has been so over-exaggerated. There's a stigma on Kobe because he never averaged more than 47% from the field in his career, ever. But let's take a look at his numbers and actually look at how efficient he was. Because he's hovering around 45 to 47% from the field for a majority of his prime. And I don't know about you, but how can you look at someone who averages 27 to 28 points on 45 to 47% from the field, 33 to 35% from 3, and like 84 to 85% from the line as an inefficient scorer, in probably the hardest era to score in league history, where spacing was still not as good as it is right now, and zone defense was still a very viable scheme to use. But especially in the early 2000s, when spacing was still not good, if not the worst it's ever been, zone defense was allowed and there was hand checking. Kobe scoring 30 points on 45% from the field, 38% from 3, and 85% from the line is simply ridiculous. But then let's look at his playoff numbers, since people just for some reason don't look at playoff numbers enough. In the playoffs, he has shot 47% or above 3 times. In 2001, okay, it's like 46.9, but y'all are already being so nitpicky about the number 47. Just let Kobe have this one year, come on. 49.7 in 2006 and 47.9 in 2008. And in all 3 of those years, he averaged at least 28 points per game. As a matter of fact, if you look into it, the only years where he had efficiency that was bad enough to be called really inefficient was 2004, 2011, and 2012. Kobe was carried. Okay, I think this is like a problem that we have as a whole NBA community. We gotta stop saying that someone is carried just because they're not the best player on their team. In what way can the guy who puts up these averages while playing all NBA caliber defense be carried to a championship? Was he the best player in these runs? No, probably not. But was he by any means carried? Hell no. The only year you can even point in which he was carried was 2000, when his numbers were atrocious in the finals. But then you consider that he was injured after game 2 of that series as Jalen Rose deliberately injured him on purpose on some Zaza shit. Yet he still played. And in game 4, being up 2-1, the difference between being up 3-1 or being tied 2-2 going into game 5 in Indiana. Kobe would take over in overtime as Shaq fouled out, putting up 28 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, and 2 blocks. But let's take it a step back and ask ourselves if the Lakers would have even been in the finals without Kobe. Because in the series before, in Game 7, Shaq, the same Shaq that was apparently carrying Kobe to 3 championships, the same Shaq that was averaging 27 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks in the first 6 games of this series, was held to 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists in Game 7. Not bad numbers, but let's add some more context to it. Sure, he had 5 assists, but he also had 4 turnovers and had 9 less points and 4 less rebounds than what he was averaging in the first 6 games. He was clearly underperforming. But then let's add that Shaq scored 0 points in the 3rd quarter. which caused them to be down by 13 points going into the fourth quarter, 15 after they scored on the first possession in the fourth quarter, where Shaq was nowhere to be found in the paint, by the way. But who led them back from the deficit that was primarily Shaq's fault? It was Kobe Bryant, who would end the game with 25 points, 7 assists, 11 rebounds, and 4 blocks. The guy outscored, out-rebounded, and outpassed Shaq in the most pivotal game of the series. But he got carried. Okay. Kobe's just a scorer. I think there's like a select group of people out there that deadass just view Kobe as a scorer and nothing else. And they do the same with MJ from time to time as well. But Kobe is actually one of the most well-rounded players we've ever seen. A guy that can give you elite scoring ability, was a good rebounder averaging 5 to 6 rebounds a game, a very underrated passer especially given his stigma, averaging 5 to 6 assists in the triangle system, and was an all-NBA caliber defender, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Come to think of it, he really doesn't have any major weaknesses in this game aside from his inconsistencies in the playoffs with his performance. But there you have it, dispelling some of the myths about Kobe Bryant's career. Now some of y'all might be asking, what about his clutchness, since that is like a myth that some people have about him, how he's not really that clutch. His stats in the clutch aren't, as good as some people make him out to be, but I think with Kobe, he's had so many clutch moments that I can name off the top of my head that I think it's not really a myth that he's clutch. I think he is clutch. Is it overrated? Now we can discuss that in the comment section down below, but I think for the most part, he is clutch. Like, you can't say he's not clutch. But with that being said, I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I'm out, man. Peace.